A lot of people out there in the political sphere have put the idea of putting, Conservative MP Lee Anderson forward as the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party is a complete dead cat. However, I would argue that given sort of the current state of the Conservative Party, given the fact that they can see you have Conservatives not turning out to vote, which is incredibly worrying for the party because that's going to be a big issue for them. But as we've said before, Lee Anderson is one of, for some bizarre reason, certainly according to Conservative Home, one of their most popular backbench MPs. So if you are a party who is desperate to galvanize your base, to drive them out to vote, Lee Anderson, unfortunately, is your best option. And this is why I think this selection took too long. Because Rishi Sunak could have very easily gone, there you go, Lee Anderson, he's chairman of the Conservative Party. But remember, Lee Anderson has never fulfilled a big cabinet position. And of course, Conservative Party chairman is a very big and important role. So why not make him the deputy? Give him some leadership experience and let him experience the role so he gets to learn the ropes. And then eventually he can be, the full deputy leader. But meanwhile, he can be the deputy and do the whole rallying of the troops, certainly at the upcoming local elections and potentially any by-elections that also come up in the meanwhile. That is why I believe Lee Anderson was put there. Not to be a dead cat, but because the Tories are so desperate to try and galvanize their base, they've got to feel their most popular man. But Lee Anderson loves to claim that, of course, the people of Ashfield are with him, that they support him, that they are backing him 100%. However, from what we can see here, not only do his, shall we say, his constituents not believe he's doing a good job, but it is very likely they ain't going to vote for him next time either. So we're going to go diving into some of these interesting quotes and comments that some of his constituents have made about him very recently, given his, shall we say, prolific rise to a quite prominent position within the party, and we'll see what they've got to say. So, before we go diving into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way, down below with the YouTube thank you button and the Podium Club and etc. All those down below. And of course, let's crack on with this then, shall we? So, this comes from The Guardian with the title of, He's a Bit of a Prat. That's certainly one way of describing him. Voters in Ashfield turn on Lee Anderson. Depending on your political instincts, he's a prime candidate for the, quote, worst man in Britain, a no-nonsense voice of the people, or a pernicious darling of the Tory right. Lee Anderson defends his inability to swerve controversy by claiming that what might make these parliamentarians blanch the people of Ashfield in Nottinghamshire unequivocally back. He said, if I oh dear, pardon me. If I say something that is supposedly outrageous in that place, the Commons, I get back to Ashfield on Thursday and people will come out of the shops and say, you're saying what I'm thinking, says the pro-death penalty former miner. But do they, though? Yesterday afternoon, on the streets of Kirkby in Ashford, 5 days after Rishi Sunak appointed him deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, Anderson's straight-talking shtick wasn't landing as favourably as he might have broadcast. In particular, his views on capital punishment weren't playing well. Coming out of the shop on one of the towns of the market town, in this case, Kirkby Sales and Exchange, was Carl Woods. The 27-year-old said that Anderson's views on the death penalty betrayed the man's character. He's, quote, not a nice person at all. Those death penalty views are just so archaic. Woods said that in 3 years of working at the Exchange, Anderson hadn't even visited once. He'd even turned down one of our Christmas giveaway prizes because it's pre-owned. He probably thought he was a bit above it. Others worry about his appetite for fostering division. Selina Powell lived in Kirkby all of her 27 years and cannot even think of a local MP less suited for the job. She said, "He's a bit of a prat," she smiled. "I wish he would just keep his mouth shut and get on with the job." Anderson shows very little appetite, though, being more discreet. Within 48 hours of being promoted by Sunak, he launched the capital punishment as 100% effective and urged the Royal Navy frigates to ferry asylum seekers straight back to France. A day later, he clashed on air with BBC journalist who raised previous accusations of dishonesty by the MP. And unfortunately, this is this I think is sort of worrying in sort of the direction that you see going. It's very, very populist. This is very, very much standard of what you would normally see, really, of someone who would be in UKIP or even the Reform Party. But as we've said before, these people have long since infiltrated the Conservative Party and they have tolerated it for the longest time. Partly because, again, they were marching very much in lockstep with them on Brexit and on a couple of other things. And then, of course, they went, whenever they said something a bit extreme, they was like, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. That's just, Lee being Lee." And, of course, they were allowed to sort of get away with it. But, of course, this has continued at pace till you've now got people like this actually being MPs. And there comes a point where the Conservative Party has to, shall we say, pull back its own rug and just see what lies beneath. And when I think they finally come time to doing that, they're not going to like it. So, back to it. Anderson's favourite Kirkby pub is aptly named the Doghouse. Inside, the teenage barman, Ollie Waite, was preparing for his afternoon rush, but still found time to rubbish the views on immigration of its most famous patron. He said, "We should be helping people who are fleeing to the UK, not turning them away," said the 19-year-old. Away from the market town, most known for Anderson, for suggesting that families using food banks were victims of poor budgeting and could live on meals cooked for mere pennies, hence the nickname 30p Lee. Outside Kirkby's library, business apprentice Molly Cunningham, 18, said Anderson's stance on poverty continued to hurt. He said, she said, "He's from a working class community. He's meant to be the person who backs you. He's on such a huge amount of money, and yet he's decided to show no sympathy. As for a 30 pence meal, what about the nutrition? What's he expecting us to live on? Gruel?" So you can see he's not really as popular as he claims in this town. And of course, a year since, the Daily Mail dubbed the 56-year-old MP the, quote, "worst man in Britain." After attacking England's footballers for, quote, "taking the knee," some residents do retain faith in their MP, lauding his knack for telling it like it is. In fact, some believe he is not even forthright enough, with one saying, "He's right on track, if you ask me. Instead of the death penalty, I'd go for a little bit of torture every week, teach them a lesson. It's too easy to execute," said a shopper outside the library who didn't want to be named. I wonder why. And here's the thing. This person sort of lauds this attitude, but what if it was his, a member of his family, himself, or one of his friends who might be in this situation? Would he suddenly be up for a little bit of torture every week if it was one of his family or friends going through this? I suddenly think he might change his tune. And bear in mind, we have seen the effects of what happens if you decide to go more and more to a very punishment-based prison system. Look at the problems that they have in the US, where it is all about punishment. The recidivity rate in America is insane. Where you come over to here, where it's, again, I'd say currently at the moment, it's maybe about 50-50, although I'd say it's probably certainly going more to right under the Tories. Um, you know, we see the recidivity rate at the moment is a bit low. But the more they go to punishment, the guarantee that's more going to rise. You want to look at the rest of Europe where they have these, it's more sort of, towards, what do they call it now? Rehabilitation. And, getting prisoners to learn sort of new skills, new life habits, coping mechanisms, so that they're prepared for when they leave prison. There's far, far lower recidivism rates. And we've seen that time and time again through multiple studies and multiple instances throughout the world, that these type of systems where you have more punishment, the more likely these offenders are to go out and commit more crimes, etc., etc. Far, far better to be more, rehabilitative systems work far, far better, have a lower recidivism rate. But there you go. So, one repeated accusation is the claim that Anderson is increasingly more preoccupied with his self-image than the woes of his constituents. Sarah Lynch, who runs the Fresh For You bakery in the precinct, said the town needed more help, not a one-man publicity machine. Gesturing at the neighbouring empty shops, the 34-year-old said, "We need to increase footfall in the town, help local businesses. Places are closing down. It's getting very tough." But can he win again? Anderson secured nearly 40% of the vote in 2019. The election when Ashfield turned blue as part of the Red Wall intake of Tory MPs, and few in Kirkby expect a repeat. With one saying, "No one is going to make that mistake again. Johnson's gone. Anderson's a Wally. The town is dying," said Chris Foster, an unemployed 31-year-old. Others are on the fence, saying, "If he can keep his trap closed for a year, I'd consider voting for him," said the former teaching assistant Rachel Atkins. But let's face it, at this rate, there's not much chance of that. So, yeah, I think, Lee Anderson's, I think, is going to be very much a one-term MP. I think most of these Red Wall intakes in 2019 are very much going to be one-term wonders. I very much do think that. And it'll be funny to see who they turn on as the excuse for their loss. Ultimately, of course, they will turn on Rishi Sunak, saying it's his fault we lost the Red Wall, not the fact that, these places need so much help and they are not getting it. These Conservative MPs across the north, some of those comments about, we need help in our town, and yet these MPs not helping these towns because, again, the Conservatives, they don't know the first thing what to do. And if they did, the party would immediately turn around and say, "No, you can't do that. That's socialist." So, yeah, they, should we say, fully well know their case. And many of them, as we've said, are already probably looking certainly for second jobs, should we say, come the next general election, which I've said probably most likely is going to be this year at some point. But of course, it's a question of just when. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a webpage link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.